are back with another Dragon Ball Fighters video, and I wanted to make another video talking about Budokai Tenkaichi 4. I'm just gonna call it BT4, okay, because that's just a lot less of a mouthful. So, here is, I just want to talk about it, right? And I decided to record the last video I recorded on Xenoverse. I hate Xenoverse, right? So I decided to record the video on Fighters. Even though I don't play Fighters anymore, I used to grind it. This is one of my most played games ever. I have like 1,000 hours on this game. But I stopped playing the game when Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta came out. And then ever since then, I've played it like once a month. If that, maybe twice a month if I'm feeling it. It's not that I don't like the game, it's just that I'm very sick of the online because this game has some of the worst online in a fighting game. Which should be getting changed soon, but they're taking their sweet old time. Anyways, I want to talk about what BT4 needs to be considered better than BT3, okay? Now, this is the problem, right? These things probably aren't going to happen, right? And I've seen a lot of people, right, talking about BT4 in general, and what inspired me to make this video was actually Maximilian, because I was watching one of his streams the other day, right? And he was talking about, cause he doesn't really know anything about the Budokai Tenkaichi series. He doesn't know anything about it. So people were saying, like, how many characters, like, he was asking, the chat, how many characters do you expect? And people were saying, like, 80 characters, right? And of course, to somebody that doesn't play the games, that's like, what are you talking about, right? That's absolutely insane. But the problem is that I don't know if anyone is expecting 80 characters, but I do know that if the game wants to be successful, it has to have an insane amount of characters, right? That is literally that is the whole identity of the series, right? So if you don't know, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 has over 150 characters, okay, right? Now, here's another thing, right? That is counting transformations, but the transformations do not work the same that they do in other games, right? In other Dragon Ball games, transforming means you just get more powerful, right? In the BT games, transforming actually changes your moveset, right? You get, not only do you get stronger and you do more damage, and you even recover health in some situations, you actually do have a completely different moveset, right? And this applies for every transformation. Like, the Super Saiyan 1 moveset is different from the Super Saiyan 2 moveset. And this is also per character. Like, Super Saiyan 1 Vegeta and Super Saiyan 1 Goku do not have the same moveset, right? And that is incredibly detailed, and you can technically say that Dragon Ball FighterZ also did this, because they did do this, right? However, you cannot transform mid-match. You have to choose the character separately. In the BT games, you can actually transform mid-match, changing your entire moveset while you do it, just literally in the middle of a match. And this was Dragon Ball FighterZ's biggest fault. This is the biggest problem that Dragon Ball FighterZ had, and it's one of the reasons why casuals will never call it the best Dragon Ball game. And why I won't even call it the best Dragon Ball game, right? Because here's the thing. No other game is touching Dragon Ball FighterZ, right? It is insane. However, when it comes to being a Dragon Ball game, not a fighting game, when it comes to being a Dragon Ball game, it literally doesn't even have transformations, right? If any other, like, let's say Xenoverse came out, right? If Xenoverse came out and it didn't have transformations, it would be over. It'd be the first game to sell negative copies, right? However, because the gameplay of fighters is so amazing, you can excuse it not having transformations, right? But if this were any other type of game, it'd be over. So, yeah, the BT games need to have a lot of characters and transformations that change their moveset, right? And yes, I want to specify, right? These are the things the game needs to have to be better than the last game, right? You want to be better. You don't want to make a sequel to a game and have it be worse than the last game, right? You don't want to do that. That's not your goal, right? So what I'm saying here is, are these expectations insane, right? They are insane. However, this is literally the stuff that the last game had, right? And that literally means, right, if the last game had this game this is basic logic. If the last game had this, the new game has to have this as well, or else it will be automatically worse than the last game, right? That's not an argument, that's just how things work. And here's the thing, will I think the new game has all of this? No. And what I'm trying to say is, I don't think BT4 will live up to the hype, right? I don't. I really don't. I think it will live up to the hype graphically. So anyways, it needs to have... Now, I'm not saying it has to have more characters than the last game, right? Because it doesn't. It doesn't have to have 150 characters. Because a lot of the characters in BT3 were filler. And what I mean is, some of them were Hercule, right? Of course people are going to want Hercule in the game, but me personally, I don't care if Hercule's in the game, right? But it also had characters from Dragon Ball, like the OG Dragon Ball, like Devilman. Is it nice to have these characters? Yes, right? However, at the same time, these characters can be replaced, right? Devilman, Hercule, maybe not Hercule, because Hercule's kind of popular, but like the OG Dragon Ball characters that no one cared about, General Blue, I think his name is, like, no, Dr. Wheeler, right? He's the guy in like the brain mech suit. Nobody knows who these people are, nobody wants to play as them, nobody cares, right? So, the only reason they were included in the last game is because Dragon Ball Super literally didn't exist yet. So you can replace those characters with Dragon Ball Super characters, right? Like Hit or Jiren, you know, you can really get in there. The problem is that the last game left out almost nobody. If you could imagine the character, they were in the game, right? Including the transformations, right? Super Saiyan God didn't exist at the time, so it only went up to Super Saiyan 4. But that's not really a problem because, like I said, it didn't exist at the time. It even had buff Trunks, which is my favorite transformation ever. And this is step one, right? Let's say the game comes out and it has 30 characters. That would be an outrage. However, it is a realistic expectation. But at the same time, these 30 characters need to have every single transformation. Frieza needs to be able to go through all of his forms, which has not been done since Raging Blast, which was over 10 years ago. He needs to go through every single one of his forms. Same with Cell, same with Trunks, same with Vegeta, same with Goku, right? Even if the roster is small, you have to give the characters everything that they had in the show, because that's literally what the game is, just a Dragon Ball simulator, right? And if you don't have every aspect, it won't work. And a lot of you are saying, why are you even saying this, right? Like, this is such a basic knowledge. And here's the thing, you would think it's basic knowledge, right? Why wouldn't the Dragon Ball simulator have these features, right? The most important parts of the show. Well, if you don't know, the last Dragon Ball game was Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, right? And Dragon Ball Z Kakarot actually cut out content. And yes, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was supposed to be the most... this is how they advertise the game. The most detailed retelling of Dragon Ball Z, right? Like, the most perfect retelling of Dragon Ball Z a video game has ever seen. If you don't know, they left out a lot of huge stuff, including the Final Flash. They cut out the Final Flash. One of Vegeta's most important moments, right? So yeah, it's basic knowledge that these things would be in the game, but the last Dragon Ball game literally cut out one of the most important moments in the whole series. So, yeah, I'm worried, because I'm worried that, yeah, I think, no, you know what, I am worried, because here's the thing, will Goku have all of his forms? It's safe to say he'll have Super Saiyan 1 all the way to Super Saiyan Blue, but will he have Kaioken, and will he have Ultra Instinct, right? And will manga content be included? Because when Budokai Tenkaichi 3 came out, there was no manga. The manga was over for a very long time, probably about over 10 years at that point. But now there's a manga that's still going on, that's like literally like 5 years ahead of the show. The show ended like 5 years ago, the manga is still going, right? Will the game have the manga content? Because there are, like, Vegeta does have a transformation that's not in the show yet. And there are villains that aren't in the show yet. And here's the problem, right? You can't include manga content if you don't include the basics, right? If the game launches with 30 characters, you can't include manga content because you're already missing out on a lot of stuff that was in the last game, right? So, my point is, the game needs to have minimum 80 characters for people to be satisfied. And do I think it will have 80 characters? No. But that's what I'm trying to say is, if you want to be better than the last game, you have to have at least 80 characters. And that's just the way it is. And a lot of people are like laughing at that, right? Because it is an absolutely insane expectation. But the problem is, we had this already. Like, we did have this. But another problem is, every game has a sequel, right? And when the sequel comes out, they use the last game and build upon the game before it, right? That's what Budokai Tenkaichi 3 did. It built off Budokai Tenkaichi 2. And BT2 built off of BT1, right? And if you don't play Dragon Ball games, you probably don't know this, but Dragon Ball games have a very serious problem where the first game is meh. The first game is absolute mid. And then the second game comes out, and it makes the first game look like an absolute pile of trash, and nobody will ever play the first game ever again. This happened with Xenoverse. This happened with Budokai Tenkaichi. No one would. Why would you play the first game over the other two? This literally happened with every single Dragon Ball game that had a sequel. The first game is just a beta test for the second game. They cannot afford to do this with BT4. It will be an absolute outrage if BT4 is just a beta test for BT5, you know? And BT3 had 2 other games to build off of. You can't build off of BT3 with BT4 because the game is so old. And because of that, they've put themselves at a disadvantage by doing that. Because if you don't know, the same thing happened 10 years ago. If you don't know, BT3 is not the last Budokai game. It is not. The last Budokai Tenkaichi game is Raging Blast 2. There was actually another series called Raging Blast, and it had 2 games, Raging Blast and Raging Blast 2, right? They were very smart with this, because the games played almost exactly the same, except it didn't have the same name, right? It wasn't called Budokai Tenkaichi. The reason they did this, at least I'm assuming the reason they did this, is because they didn't want people thinking it was going to have the same amount of content that BT3 did. And in order to subvert that expectation, they just called it something different, right? And guess what? It had like 1/3 of the content that BT3 did. But you know what else? People thought it was a good game. People liked it. And I think part of it has to do with it's not technically a part of the BT series. It just only has, you know, the same exact gameplay. Same exact controls, same exact gameplay. But it doesn't share the name. So people weren't expecting a sequel to BT, right? They were expecting something different. So they weren't disappointed, right? What I'm trying to say is they easily could have done the same thing with this next game. They could have called it something different. But they didn't. They specifically called it BT4. So my question is, are they really desperate for money because their last games, Jump Force and One Punch Man, failed? Both of those games were shut down? Or do they genuinely believe they can meet the expectations that the last game set? I don't know. There's no way of knowing until the game comes out. But I do want you to keep that in mind, is that they could have easily have called it something else. So there's a reason they didn't call it that. There's a reason they called it BT4 and not something else. So roster is obviously a big thing. The other big thing that I want to talk about is story mode, right? This is easy, right? You want to be better than BT3, you have to do something that BT3 didn't. Which was, you can cut out the Dragon Ball Z story if you want to, but include Dragon Ball Super story, because Dragon Ball Super story has never been playable. Never. Not in its entirety. If you include Dragon Ball Super story, that's already something that BT3 didn't do, because it couldn't do it, right? That's something new. Just include the whole story of Dragon Ball Super. And include like World Tournament mode, include a lot of single player modes. The final thing is something that's very big, because the game that you see right here did not do it. And I don't care what you say, it just didn't do it. Budokai Tenkaichi 3 needs to have good music. Dragon Ball Fighters, I believe, is composed by the same guy that made the Budokai Tenkaichi 3 music. Here's the thing, Dragon Ball Fighters has some of the worst music in the entire Dragon Ball franchise. It is so generic, it's just background music. And here's the thing, if you played Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, Dragon Ball Fighters is the rock version of the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite soundtrack. It's so bland, so boring. There's every stage and every character has a song, yet I can't tell you one song besides Dragon Ball Super Broly's, which is the most popular song. Garbage soundtrack, it has no soul, right? We were expecting something like Guilty Gear. This game does not have a Guilty Gear soundtrack, right? And I'm not even talking about lyrics. It does not need to have lyrics. The old Guilty Gear games have some of the most recognizable, amazing soundtracks ever, and they don't have lyrics. This game's soundtrack is just so bland, and it sucks. I think Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 has better music than this game. And here's the thing, Budokai, all the Budokai games, all 6 of them, Budokai and Budokai Tenkaichi, have some of the most, have the best music, some of the best music in video games ever, right? And if the BT4 music is comparable to Dragon Ball Fighters, it's over. We've already lost. We're done for. But yeah, music, roster size, and here's the thing, all you have to do is just copy and paste the gameplay, right? Gameplay doesn't matter. They already had it perfected 16 years ago. Just keep the gameplay the same. If they try to change it, it will be a disaster. Just keep it the same, add some, like, a new mechanic or two. But anyways, that's all I want to talk about. You know, like, subscribe, and let me know if these... I know these expectations are unrealistic, but they are accurate. This is what the game needs to have to at least be able to be put up against Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Anyways, I'm gonna have a new video tomorrow, so like, subscribe, and peace.